Which boss is this? Oh, this is this guy that slams you. Alright, he got immediately stunned and then died in the stun. It's working. It's working wonders. Alright, we figured it out. So we stun the boss and he dies before he comes out of the stun. Alright guys, welcome back. Hope you guys enjoyed that clip. But basically I'm here to show you a new setup that I've come up with that I've been working on the last few days. And this setup is to try and help us get much more single target damage if we are willing to do a kind of a simple little gem swap. And this is going to allow us to basically delete the bosses from the game in no time at all. So as you can see there, I was able to kill that boss inside of the stun. He didn't even get to do anything. And we basically had every single ailment on him. And we had a massive 77% shock, increasing the damage he takes by 77%. And I will show you how we are achieving all of that now. So basically the way this works is we are swapping 3 of our normal mapping skill gems out for some better skill gems for bossing. And so our main skill in mapping is Stormwave, and that is being replaced here by Tempest Flurry. Tempest Flurry is nice because it is able to generate combo, and that allows us to use Tempest Bell. And Tempest Bell is probably the best single target skill for the monk to be using. This has crazy damage potential. And the funny thing is you're not even limited to 1 bell. If you put another bell in another skill slot, you can have 2 bells. So actually we're making good use of that here. And we're putting 2 bells in for Shattering Palm, Stormwave, and Grim Feast. Grim Feast won't really be doing anything on bosses since we won't be killing anything. Shattering Palm, this is much better for mapping because it's an explode-based ability. This can be good on bosses, but only if they are surrounded by other smaller enemies, which rarely happens. And then Stormwave is much more convenient and nice for mapping because of its ranged component. But on a boss, it's okay to get up close and personal, especially if you're going to be stunning them. It won't really matter. You won't have to play as safe. So, Tempest Flurry here. This is going to be our main attack that we're going to be using, and we want to get the mana cost on this relatively low. I currently have it down here at 59 mana. This is going to make it so that we don't have any issues sustaining the attacking with the Tempest Flurry. And the way that we're going to achieve this here is with the bossing setup here on the passive skill tree. We are going for all the different points that reduce cost. So I currently have them unspec'd because I was testing something else. But basically, you're going to be taking Mental Toughness. You're going to be taking Conservative Casting, as well as the Anoint on your Amulet, Deep Trance, giving an additional 10% reduced cost, and all these things together, plus Inspiration on the Tempest Flurry. I think in the previous video when I was recording, I think it was 47 total mana. Right now it's 59 because I don't have that point allocated at the moment, but it would be 47 total mana here for me at least on a level 29 Tempest Flurry. And so it's going to be relatively cheap. We're going to be able to just spam it and not run out of mana, which means we can get as much damage uptime as possible. So, starting off, I'm going to go over the supports. So we're first of all using Martial Tempo, giving us 25% more attack speed to be able to trigger the bell more rapidly. That is going to increase our damage quite a bit. Then we're getting Concentrated Effects. We don't really care about the area of effect again because this ability is a melee attack. We're going to be hitting them in the face with our staff. So area of effect doesn't matter, but this is a massive 40% more damage. Next, Overcharge. So this is going to allow us to apply that massive shock. I was able to apply 77, and you can scale that even more. I do have 1 point here on my passive skill tree, 1 jewel here with some magnitude. This is helping actually quite a bit. And then I have the magnitude down here for bossing, but eventually you'll be able to come over here, get this magnitude, or you can get more jewels with magnitude on them, which is actually going to be a massive damage increase because every point of shock the boss has on them is an additional 1% damage. So if you can get the boss to like 100% shock, you're going to be dealing 100% more damage to the boss. Next up, We're using Inspiration again to reduce the cost so that we can spam this ability. And then finally, Rage. This is going to allow us to generate Rage. This is a pretty important. I'll go over next in the Tempest Spell setup. But basically, in the first 4 hits, when we're hitting the boss to generate the 4 combo points to place down our bell, we're going to be generating a 12 Rage from this. And if you're using one of these Rage on hit jewels like I am down here, you'll be actually getting more than that. You'll be getting 16 total Rage in those 4 hits. And then you're going to be placing down your bell after those 4 attacks. So you're going to dash in on the boss with Hand of Chiola, attack the boss 4 times with Tempest Flurry, and drop your first bell. And this bell is going to have overabundant support, which means it's going to allow us to have 2 of them out at the same time. So you attack 4 times, drop the bell, and then 4 attacks later you can drop a second bell. And that effectively is doubling your damage while both bells are active. Next, we're going to be using Primal Armament. This is a huge damage increasing support. And because it has a cost multiplier, it's going to make Tempest Flurry cost way too much. So we're putting it here on the bell since we're only going to be casting it a couple times. And then we're moving on to Rage Forge. So this is why we're using Rage on hits here on the Tempest Flurry. This is going to consume 10 Rage when casting the bell or dropping the bell for it to deal 35% more damage. And this will make the bell, not only the dropping the bell portion, the impact, deal 35% more damage, but during the entire duration where we're hitting the bell, it's also going to be dealing 35% more damage. So this is a massive support to be using to increase our damage. Next up, Heft. This is giving us 30% more maximum physical damage. So this skill is doing physical damage, and then based on the ailments on it, it's going to be converting that physical damage into different elements. So actually getting more physical damage here is effectively more elemental damage because all that damage is going to be getting converted. So more physical damage is increasing the high end of the rolls on the damage here. So for example, it would be increasing this 21,000 number to be 30% higher. And that is effectively 15% more damage as it averages out. And then finally, Heavy Swing. So this is probably one of the better supports you can get for this skill because the downside here of having 10% less attack speed has no effect on the Tempest Spell because the Tempest Spell triggers as often as you are hitting it. It does not have any kind of attack speed. So there's basically no downside in using this. And this is just 35% more melee physical damage, which again, like I said, is just more overall damage that is then being converted into an element. So there is you're just basically getting 35% more damage. And then next up, we have the second bell, which is supporting our first bell. And this bell is going to be our stun bell. So as you can see there in the previous clip, I was able to stun the boss pretty much immediately, like within 1 second of dropping the bell. And that allowed us to get much better damage uptime and kill him before he was even able to recover from that stun. So this bell is going to be using Overpower, Ruthless, and these are both the big stunning supports. And then finally, I'm using Electrocute to allow us to apply the last ailment on the Tempest Spell. So the Tempest Spell is doing 30% more damage for each elemental ailment. Those are Ignite, Chill, Freeze, Shock, and Electrocute. We are inherently chilling, freezing, and shocking it with our Ascendancy as well as our lightning damage from Tempest Flurry. But then for fire damage, we actually want to have some flat fire damage on the weapon if you can get it. But I've opted to solve that to get a nice breach ring here with some nice flat fire damage. And this is replacing our normal mapping ring, the unique ring, because we don't really need the unique ring on the boss. It's basically just helping with our clear. So we're going to be using a flat fire ring with the attribute requirements we need, or the resistance requirements we need to reach the same thresholds that we had with the unique ring. So this unique ring was giving me cold res and strength, and so I found a nice breach ring that has both cold res and strength, as well as a bunch of flat fire damage. The mana regen here is also kind of nice for when we're fighting the boss, so we don't run out of mana nearly as quickly. So yeah, this is the kind of ring you're going to be looking for to replace your unique ring while bossing. And then so that's how we're going to be applying the Ignite, is with the flat damage on the weapon and the flat damage on the ring. And then finally, for the Electrocute, which is the last ailment, like I said, the second bell is going to be able to do that. So the second bell is going to be electrocuting the first bell, causing us to gain additional damage on that bell. And this is the big damaging bell. We want to do as much damage as possible. We're going to have 2 of these out at a time. And so we want to have every single elemental ailment on it as possible. And in the clip, you could see there that the boss was chilled, ignited, and he was also shocked. And he was working toward a freeze, but we killed him so fast that we never got the freeze. And he was also electrocuted, or at least he was working toward being electrocuted. So that is how we can see that all the ailments are playing a role here on the bell. And then finally, The last support I'm using here, which is kind of an optional one depending on your mana problems, is Font of Mana. So when placing this second bell, it is going to be giving us some mana regen while we're near it. This is not really needed. You could also go for one called Font of Rage, which is basically the same thing, except it'll be giving us rage instead of mana back. That would be if you don't have any mana issues, you could be generating additional rage to give you more damage. That's another good one. The second bell's role is not really to deal damage. That's why I'm not putting as many damage supports in it. Its role is to stun the boss, support the first bell, and help us either sustain our mana or sustain our rage. So that is the bossing setup. As you can see, it absolutely deletes those like tier 15 bosses within like a few seconds. And I've also used this, you'll see later, I've used this on the pinnacle bosses. It works really well there as well. And the damage is just much, much higher than what we could achieve with using Stormwave. So this is the bossing setup I recommend when you're fighting the Citadel or Pinnacle bosses. This will get the job done much, much quicker. All right, so next up, I'll be preemptively answering some questions on why I made the decisions I made. And so I will explain that now. So we are not doing really that much cold damage, and that is why I went for a stun setup versus a freeze setup. Here with our Ascendancy, we are doing only about 15% of our damage is going to be added as cold because of these 2 points here. But that is not significant enough, and we're not really invested into freeze buildup anywhere on the tree for us to get a freeze in a meaningful time. So the freeze version would have been considered, like if you wanted to go for the freeze version, if you're using Ice Strike instead of Tempest Flurry, you could have your second bell with something like Glaciation and Deep Freeze is an option instead of the stun setup. But since we're using Tempest Flurry and we're going for that massive shock, which is increasing the damage that the boss is taking by a massive amount, we're instead going for the stun setup because the stun is much easier to achieve with how little cold damage we are doing. So this was able to stun the boss very, very quickly, almost instantly, and I think it is just overall just a better version than going for the freeze setup. With the freeze setup, you would not have the massive shock that we have, reducing your damage by quite a lot. So I like the stun setup a lot better. And then another question is, why are you not incorporating the charge staff into the build? So the charge staff basically will allow you, when you have it active, to hit the bell twice as often per attack, because you're going to be getting the extra shockwave effect. And the reason why I didn't use this was because of how difficult it was to incorporate into the build and how bad it felt to use. So basically, the way we would use this is you would have to first shock the boss, and then use Siphoning Strike to gain a power charge, and then you would use Charge Staff to gain the buff. That is adding 2 extra buttons to the setup, which means we have to swap out more gems, and it also made me have issues where I was thinking too much about what I had to do next on a boss fight and not focusing as much on just, you know, dealing damage or avoiding mechanics. So it makes the combo a little bit more confusing and a little less straightforward, and it actually isn't any better. And I'll explain that because basically this would allow us to hit the bell twice as often per attack, but also would kill the bell twice as fast. So the bell inherently, it has a certain amount of hits before it's destroyed. So for example here with quality, the bell takes 30 hits to be destroyed. So even if we're hitting the bell twice as fast, or twice as much, we're still going to be breaking the bell within, you know, the 30 hits. So Charge Staff wasn't really making much sense to me. So instead I decided to add in a second bell, which is basically achieving those same results. We are basically hitting the bell with our Tempest Flurry, as well as triggering 2 bells at a time, which are each hitting each other. So both bells are getting hit twice per attack. So effectively, we're getting the same results as if we were to run a Charge Staff setup, but now we're getting twice as much value because we're getting 2 bells and we're getting 4 bell triggers per attack versus just 2. And then, so that's why I went for that setup. Also, there is the option, if you wanted to go for Charge Staff, of trying to fit in Combat Frenzy. We actually make some room for that with taking out Grim Feast. We get 30 Spirit back, so we could put in Combat Frenzy. But to use that, we're going to have to make use of the Resonance Keystone. This will allow you, when you freeze the bell, to gain a power charge. But again, that would be some point investment we'd have to do, and we have to rework our skill tree a little bit. I opted to find a solution that is very straightforward for bossing, where all you have to do is swap in some gems, 1 ring, and you're ready to go. You don't even have to do any modifications to the skill tree, and the build is very straightforward. It is just dropping some bells on the boss. Everyone can do that. Doesn't require any planning or any, combo that like has to do one thing before the other. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is something that I've been working on because I wanted to have a kind of best of both worlds scenario where this would be one of the best mapping builds in the entire game, and then also with some small modifications, a few gems swapped in, be one of the better bossing characters as well. So I think this is a great way to solve that problem, and now we can kind of do any content we want with your Invoker character. You don't have to re-roll a second character to do bosses, and it's just going to make your life a whole lot easier. As you can see there, that tier 15 boss didn't even get to do anything. He basically got deleted from the game. And so effectively, now our Explode Invoker is also able to explode bosses. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one, and take care. Bye-bye. Woo! There we go.